These towers fired nothing, yet they decided who lived over England in 1940. In the Battle of Britain, this radar chain told fighter pilots exactly where the Luftwaffe was before they saw it. And the reason it worked has almost nothing to do with the towers themselves. By the summer of 1940, Nazi Germany controlled the skies over occupied Europe and turned toward Britain. The Luftwaffe needed air superiority before any invasion of Britain could even be attempted. The Royal Air Force had fewer fighters and fewer pilots than the German Air Force. Britain could not win by simply matching plane for plane, so it needed a different advantage. That advantage was a secret early warning system called Chain Home, built along the coast. By 1940, around 20 Chain Home stations scanned the skies from Scotland to the south coast. Each station beamed radio waves out over the sea and listened for the echo bouncing back. An operator watching a screen could see a blip and estimate the range and bearing of incoming aircraft. This meant Britain could detect German formations forming up over France before they even crossed the Channel. That warning gave Fighter Command something no other air force in the world had in 1940: time. But raw radar blips alone were nearly useless. They were just dots without any story attached. Someone had to turn dozens of scattered signals into one clear picture of the battle in real time. That work happened inside a room most people have never heard of, called the filter room. At Bentley Priory, near London, reports from every radar station poured in by telephone line simultaneously. Trained plotters, many of them women in the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, cross-checked every single report. They filtered out duplicate signals and errors, then placed a single marker for each raid on the table. Each marker showed the raid's estimated size, height, and direction, updated roughly every minute. This filtered picture then flowed upward to Fighter Command's own operations room within seconds. This entire structure, radar to filter room to fighters, was known as the Dowding system. It was named after Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding, who had championed radar years before the war. Dowding had insisted years earlier that any new fighter must be built around this whole detection system. Dowding fought skeptics inside the Air Ministry who thought fighters should simply patrol on their own. He argued that a fighter without a detection network was just a fast, blind airplane. By the time Chain Home data reached the plotting table, every second already mattered enormously. German bombers could cross the Channel from French airfields in under 20 minutes. That left barely enough time to identify a raid, scramble fighters, and gain altitude. So the filtered plot moved next to a large map inside the group operations rooms. Fighter Command divided Britain into groups, each responsible for defending its own stretch of coast. Number 11 Group, covering London and the southeast, would face the heaviest German attacks. Each group operations room received the filtered plot and decided which squadrons would actually scramble. This mattered because Dowding refused to send every fighter up for every single incoming raid. Pilots and machines were finite resources, and Britain could not afford to waste either one. So controllers held squadrons on the ground until a raid's size and target became clear. This restraint was only possible because the filtered picture was trusted to be accurate. An error here could send fighters chasing empty sky, while real bombers slipped through unopposed. To keep the system honest, radar alone was never the only source feeding the filter room. The Royal Observer Corps tracked aircraft visually once they crossed inland, beyond radar's coastal reach. Thousands of volunteer spotters logged aircraft type, height, and direction from posts across the country. Their reports also flowed by telephone straight into the same filter room at Bentley Priory. This combination let Britain track enemy aircraft continuously from the French coast to their targets. No other country in 1940 had linked radar, telephone lines, and observers into one continuous chain. Germany actually had early radar of its own, called Freya, but never built this integrated network. German commanders underestimated how much the human filtering system mattered compared to the machines themselves. Luftwaffe intelligence badly misjudged Fighter Command's strength and how quickly it could recover between raids. That misjudgment led the Luftwaffe to target radar towers themselves, hoping to blind Britain outright. On August 13, 1940, the Luftwaffe launched what it called Eagle Day, a massed assault on Britain. Radar towers along the coast became priority targets, since knocking them out could open a blind gap. At Ventnor, on the Isle of Wight, German bombs badly damaged the chain home station's buildings. Yet even at Ventnor, the tall steel towers themselves proved remarkably hard to actually knock down. Open steel lattice construction let blast waves pass through instead of toppling the whole structure. Engineers had actually anticipated bomb damage and built redundancy into the transmitter and receiver huts. Within hours, engineers patched cables and got Ventnor transmitting again using mobile backup equipment. Crucially, German intelligence never realized how quickly chain home stations could return to service. Reconnaissance photos showed damage, so Luftwaffe planners assumed the stations were finished for good. After roughly a week of these attacks, the Luftwaffe shifted its bombing away from the radar chain. They concluded the towers were nearly impossible to permanently destroy and not worth the continued effort. That single decision may have been one of the most consequential mistakes of the entire campaign. Because the Dowding system stayed intact, Fighter Command kept its early warning advantage throughout the battle. The Luftwaffe then turned its bombers toward the fighter airfields feeding No. 11 Group squadrons. This phase in late August came far closer to actually breaking Fighter Command's operational capacity. Airfields near London, like Biggin Hill, took repeated strikes that damaged runways and control facilities. Even so, the filter room kept functioning, moved partly to backup sites when needed. Controllers adapted by scrambling fighters earlier, trading a little fuel for a little more altitude. That extra altitude mattered enormously, since height gave British fighters the advantage in the first pass. Then, on September 7, 1940, the Luftwaffe shifted targets again, this time toward London itself. Historians still debate why, but this decision gave fighter commands battered airfields desperately needed relief. With airfields no longer the priority, the same detection chain now guided defense of the capital. Radar plots gave London's defenders roughly the same crucial minutes of warning as the coastal squadrons had. By mid-September, the pattern was clear. Every German shift in tactics, the chain simply adapted around. September 15, 1940, brought the campaign's largest daylight assault, later remembered as Battle of Britain Day. Chain home radar picked up the massing German formations while they were still assembling over French airfields. That early notice let No. 11 Group scramble nearly every available squadron well before the bombers arrived. German pilots that day were stunned to find British fighters waiting at altitude instead of scrambling too late. Captured German aircrew later described the encounter as evidence Britain had far more fighters than intelligence had claimed. In truth, Fighter Command's strength hadn't grown. Its warning time and coordination had simply gotten sharper. That single day convinced German High Command the Royal Air Force was nowhere near defeat, despite months of bombing. 2 days later, Hitler indefinitely postponed Operation Sea Lion, the planned invasion of Britain. Without air superiority, any cross-channel invasion risked losing troop barges to unopposed Royal Air Force attacks. The Dowding system hadn't just won battles, it had removed the precondition Germany needed to invade at all. But the battle in the air continued for weeks more, now shifting mostly to nighttime bombing raids. Chain Home was built to detect daylight formations and struggled badly to track single bombers after dark. This gap pushed Britain to develop a second radar system entirely, built for close-range nighttime interception. Airborne interception radar, fitted inside twin-engine night fighters, let a crew find bombers invisible to the naked eye. A radar operator sat behind the pilot, guiding him toward a target using only a small glowing screen. Early results were poor, since the technology and the tactics for night interception were still being invented. By early 1941, ground-based radar improvements finally raised nighttime interception rates to meaningful levels. Meanwhile, daylight losses had already forced the Luftwaffe to fundamentally rethink its entire campaign against Britain. By late October 1940, large daylight bomber raids over Britain had essentially stopped for good. Official Air Ministry figures later credited the Dowding system as decisive to Fighter Command's ability to keep fighting. Roughly 3,000 Allied aircrew flew in the battle, a number small enough that every pilot mattered enormously. Pilots from Poland, Czechoslovakia, Canada, and other Allied nations flew alongside British squadrons throughout the campaign. Yet without the detection chain feeding them accurate, timely information, none of that courage alone could have won. The towers never fired a shot, but they decided, minute by minute, exactly where the fight would happen. The Battle of Britain wasn't won by better pilots alone, but by a system that gave them time to act. Chain Home proved that detecting the enemy first can matter more than outgunning him in the air. That lesson about information, timing, and trust still shapes how militaries think about early warning today. If this history of hidden systems and forgotten wars interests you, subscribe to Colonel Mittens for more.